I have no love at all whatsoever for Joy Reid. I think she's one of the worst people in all of corporate media, and she's not there anymore. Whether it was because she had an attack of conscience regarding what happened in Gaza, it was a topic that a lot of people grew a conscience on. So as much as Joy feels like she's somebody who really stood out, Tucker Carlson did as well. And so did a number of other people. But she decided to go on or make her rounds, if you will, on a number of corporate media, or I should just say independent media and corporate media channels, including CNN, but also on The Breakfast Club, and discuss what it's like to speak out against the state of Israel and just this whole Zionist movement in general.
The piece is Gaza. And you just can't get away from the fact that talking about Gaza in a way that humanizes Palestinians is not the usual way that cable news operates or that any news in this country operates. For whatever reason, that topic makes people uncomfortable.
She knows the reason. She damn well knows the reason for whatever reason.
Who funds your channel? You know,
for whatever reason.
And listen, don't you ever forget what I did when I was president in 1996, when I put together one of the most nefarious bills in the history of the country, the Telecom Act of 96 with Newt Gingrich. Boy, we really did a number on this country with that, didn't we? So when you consolidate all that media power and you go from 55 media companies down to 6 and now 5, this is what ends up happening. And the billionaire class that is, as you said, Terry, very pro-Israel, and for most of it is business interests, they will not tolerate anything that threatens the state of Israel in any capacity. And that includes firing everybody if they have to, no matter how much the mask comes off, even though I believe that
you don't get to have a conscience just because you got your ass fired.
Exactly. Well, because again, for her, it's all about, you know, it's a pity party. But it's important to note that sometimes those that are scorned are also going to tell the truth about what's really going on.
Which is why nobody should ever hire them in the future.
Good point.
Right. Regular folks uncomfortable because I think the majority of Americans agree that what's happening there is not just a genocide, but is unconscionable for us to participate in. I think most Americans believe that, agree with that. But there's a discomfort with that topic that I saw in the policing of my social media, in requests to not like certain things on social media. There was a sense that topic, it makes people uncomfortable.
Saying you want to see innocent men, women, and children not be killed shouldn't make anybody uncomfortable.
It shouldn't. It didn't with Rwanda. When the Hutu and the Tutsi were slaughtering each other, we very easily in the media said that was a genocide, right? I mean, if you look at what Russia is doing to Ukraine, when they bomb a school or a hospital or a music school, that is reported as.
You see, this is when
that's where it all comes crashing down.
Because all she's doing is throwing out NATO talking points like Ukraine is completely innocent of this. The Ukrainian people are, but the Ukrainian government isn't. And the same is true with our influence through NATO and what's going on in Russia. So her attitude is, I'm going to be very corporate friendly with this topic, so maybe they'll let me back in. What in the hell that has to do with anything is completely pointless here. And again, this is why I don't sympathize with people like her. But she is telling her version of the truth, and she is admitting why.
There's not versions of a truth. Continue.
Barbaric. It's reported as genocidal. When they're stealing Ukrainian children and kidnapping them to Russia, there's moral clarity from the media, and there's no hesitation to say that what Russia is doing is evil. But when it comes to what's happening to the people in Gaza, number one, it isn't talked about that much on U.S. media. If you go overseas, it's on a lot more. And then number two, the way it's spoken about is, I don't know, maybe it's like when a friend is doing something wrong, you don't want to talk about them. You don't want to say anything negative. But there is a hesitation. I definitely think that's a thing in American media.
I don't know why you wanted to watch that. That was so sad and pathetic.
It's very difficult to listen to anything that comes out of that person's mouth, considering how badly she has lied over the years, particularly about her own bigotry that she tries to deny. And was caught red-handed, if you remember. And she claimed that it was like an FBI inside job or some crap. But that being said, she is still saying that the reason I was fired from MSDNC is because I was willing to tell the truth about Gaza. Now, whatever possessed her to go ahead and say that, I mean, I'll still give her credit for saying what needed to be said. She'll still come back with her NATO talking points and just make a complete fool out of herself. But it also goes to show you that there is no wiggle room. When it comes to corporate media, whether it is MSNBC, whether it is CNN, whether it is Fox News, you cannot and will not deviate from America is Israel, Israel is America, and that is the end of the conversation. And if you even attempt to get away from it, you will be made an example of. And with all due respect to Joy Reid, because she's small potatoes, but if they can make an example out of Tucker Carlson, they can make an example out of anybody. There is no limit to how far they'd be willing to go in terms of protecting the state of Israel. And I think a lot of it is driven ideologically by Christian and Jewish Zionism, but it's also certainly very economic at the same time. So while I have zero sympathy whatsoever for Joy Reid, I can still appreciate the fact that she's still saying that this is why I was released. It had nothing to do with me doing a bad job, although she sucks at it anyway. But the fact that she's willing to tell the truth about such a crucial issue, how can she be so forthcoming about the issue of Israel-Palestine and AOC and Bernie feel the need to still play politics on this issue? There is no playing politics on this issue anymore. There never should have been in the first place. But the idea that they're still doing it is completely disheartening. And I understand why so many people want to check out of politics at this point. So as we wind down the conversation, what do you guys want to see happen? I mean, obviously, we appreciate your enthusiasm, Terry, and we are going to stay with it. We're not giving up on this. But I still think that we have to be more conscientious of what are the best potential avenues that we need to be exploring in terms of how we continue to convert people onto the side of the religious indoctrination is going to be the death of us if we don't get away from it. And we have to do everything we can to rally enough people to eventually free the Palestinians as best we can.
Well, I think, gosh, we've just scraped the surface of this whole thing. I think one thing that I say to Christians, I use the book of Ecclesiastes because that book is very different than anything else in the Bible. It's Solomon writing about life under the sun. And there's a verse in there that says that basically, I'll paraphrase, life under the sun is governed by time and chance, which shoots a hole in anybody's God has a plan, God has a reason. There was a reason that it rained on our picnic and not the picnic 100 miles away. Bullshit. Time and chance governs life under the sun, period. And I believe that. I also think that we have let the right define woke, and yet we don't define MAGA. Where is the definition of MAGA? We need to create one. And that's what I advise Democrats here in Alabama, and I do try to help them as much as I can. But this is such a red state, it's very, very difficult. And I had another thought, but I forgot it. Maybe it'll come to me while Kayse is talking. I'd rather hear her talk anyway.
Well, I think those were all great points. I've really appreciated this conversation. I always love chatting with you, Jen and Peter. I think that one thing that I often talk about in my live streams and in my content is about how, honestly, moving away from the religious fundamentalism that I grew up in was a privilege. And I think that really the conversation about politics and religion being too intertwined is a great start. I think that one of the major steps in releasing us all from this hell of religious fundamentalism and how it does affect politics so violently, honestly, is what it boils down to when it trickles down across, the rest of the world, is actually improving the material conditions of the everyday people. Because as that clip about Kenneth Copeland that we watched just now was saying, a lot of the people in the congregation are moved by the pastor's rhetoric with the promise of future blessings, whether in this life or in heaven, right? People are hurting and they are tired and they are feeling the weight of capitalism. Now, we're here in, the heart of the empire, we have this privilege of being here and not in all of the other communities that are being exploited by us. And that is important to recognize. But I think that there is actual hardship that a lot of the poorer rural communities, the uneducated communities, are feeling. And when we have the material conditions to allow them to explore their own critical thinking, the actual indoctrination and propaganda that's happening, I think that religious fundamentalism will naturally dwindle. And so I am very heartened by Mamdani's win. I really am. I do think, it's kind of a balance of, okay, let's not celebrate too much. There's still a lot of work to be done. However, I think at the very least, as Peter was saying, I do think that it is symbolic and it is indicative of a movement that is growing. And I thought the same exact thing actually about please don't go the way of AOC, right? We had such high hopes for AOC in the very beginning of her political career. And then it's like somewhere along the line, she did have to kind of give way to the immense weight of the institution, of the establishment. And my gut instinct is telling me that it's going to take a lot of different Mamdanis is what it's really going to take. One is great. That's a great start, honestly. But in order to actually bring about effective change, in order, honestly, for Mamdani not to get sucked into the same path, it's going to take a coalition of a bunch of different, which, you guys all know all of this, but the answer to the question of how to minimize, reduce the harmful impact of religious fundamentalism through LGBTQ discrimination, through Christian Zionism, through personal violence, interpersonal violence, I think is actually going to be improving the material conditions for everyone.